Thank you so much, Ahim. I know that's a connection that the HR Rockstars group have been wanting to do with you for a long time, and you are so inspiring. You know, your book Infectious, if I can speak on a personal note, has been literally transformative for me. And it's a question of, I guess, like I was saying to Angela earlier, uh, timing. That your book is full of colors and textures, and you use adjectives so eloquently. And I think, you know, it's just a realization that in life, much like we're doing right now, we just got to be ourselves and be true. And sometimes just by hiding, you know, the choice of words is always key. And so I think your model, Infectious model, really speaks to that. And at some point, we need to jump. And so you've invited us before the hangout to do exactly that, to jump at any point in time. And that's the beauty of co-creation and what makes HR Rockstars great. I mean, our conversations are always full of playfulness and bliss, and that's what I'm hoping that we're going to be engaging with you. So without further ado, I want to give you, you know, the stage, so to speak, to just allow us to get to know you a bit better, who you are, and you know, beyond the international acclaimed author and performance coach that you claim to be and that you are. I'm very grateful for our friendship, and you know, let's just hear and turn the table to you and listen to you rather than me.
Thank you, Johan. I'm a total improviser, so even we shared some questions. I'm on a flow with where we're going right now.
Yes.
I live in South Florida. I live in a small beach town just outside of Miami, where I moved to 10 years ago after living in New York, and I moved here to be close to the water. And the reason I was just thinking about the water because I like the fluidity of water. I love the unpredictability of water, you know, and I get incredible energy from water. And what I love about living, you know, I go to the beach every day here, is that the beach is never the same on any given day. I go here and I don't know what it's going to be like in the morning. And that experience is really awesome. And if we can take that sense of fluidity into our conversations and relationships with people, that's pretty cool. The other stuff that might be interesting to you is I started off my career 30 years ago in New York. I was an acting coach at some big acting schools. And what I love about actors continuously work on exploring their range. Not because who they are isn't good enough, but it's fun to play with the edges. One of my pet peeves in the corporate world, you know, where I toil these days, is that many people I work with think they have this very good idea of who they are. A lot of it based on psychological profiling, which I find incredibly limiting. You know, because we start immediately putting labels and boxes on people, and it's a starting point. So I'm interested in playing with the edges. I'm interested in playing with what we don't know about ourselves yet, because that's how we get to discover the unknown, which is really awesome, and which gets me to the water and all the other stuff. So that might be enough to get started.
Who wants to jump? That is a marvelous intro. I love water too.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm not the only one.
No, you're not. I adore water, sea. I live in the center of my city, and I am like 2 minutes away from 2 big rivers.
Nice.
And I always lived with the water, so I can connect with what you were saying 100%, because I think that water is a very good, it has very good qualities that can explain a business or idea or talent or anything that has certain flow, you know. And so that's first thing that comes to my mind. And I must say that whenever I read your blog, your articles, I see that color, that easiness, that flow, that it just everything is everything is in full bliss, everything is well combined, and it has great rhythm. And I'm wondering how much of that is from that point that you moved from New York to a seashore. You know, it's like two different sets in your life. Were you very much different in New York and writing about other things, or you were just suffering in New York, waiting to unleash on the seashore?
Europe's best secret is just spoken.
You said so many wonderful things, so let me just bounce off of a couple. I'm so glad you used the word flow. I'm sure a lot of you know the work of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who's sort of the master of writing about flow. Is an amazing psychologist, and
that word is easy for you to say.
It's not easy. I talk about him a lot, but the word, how we get to the flow experience where we are so fully in the moment, and where we totally surrender to a moment, and we lose all sense of time. I'm looking at Ande because a lot of us, when we have good sex, we get that in sex, right? But it's wonderful. I don't want to label you as the sex goddess only, but but
go ahead. You can go ahead and label me as the sex goddess. That works.
I'm glad you'll take the label. But I want to relate this to the work I do because my company primarily works with C-level business leaders, and we're talking pretty esoteric right now. But the moment we get to the experience of flow, and by that I mean I'm in the middle of a conversation, I feel totally connected to the other person. I feel like I've known you forever, and I don't want the conversation to end. That's pretty magical. And what I learned from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi and the kind of stuff I read about is that that's not a lucky accident. There are things we can do to facilitate that kind of connection with people. And a lot of that connection is not about what we say, it's the unspoken stuff. So what really interests me is how do we, what's the unspoken stuff that we can play with? And how do we make that concrete and actionable? And that's a lot of the work that I do in my firm, and I have 5 other associates. So there's a group of us who do this work with corporate leaders. And to just go back to Eva and the water, where you started, the water flows, right? and water is a wonderful reminder of the experience of flow. I lived in the early 90s for a year in Tobago, which is this beautiful island at the far end of the Caribbean. And I did nothing but read books and windsurf for a year. And that was very magical. I became a very good windsurfer. But after a year, I couldn't wait to get the heck out of Tobago. I realized that I'd done enough windsurfing, I had done enough water, and I missed some of the stuff that I get from U.S. culture. So South Florida is this wonderful hybrid of what I love about the Caribbean, the tropics, the water, and the things that I like about American culture. So it's very much the spiritual center for me in that way.
So, I've experienced flow twice because I have 2 children. So in sex terms, that's twice. But to be more serious, slightly more serious, I play a musical instrument. And I am very much aware of when in the flow, as it were, and sort of losing sight of oneself and seeing it in the whole round of what you're doing. But I mean, what about those people that kind of don't get this concept of flow? Because with a lot of musicians I work with, they spend a lot of time reading chord books, and they think the answer lies in perhaps a bunch of techniques. And I don't believe that that may be part of it, but it's certainly not the whole of it. So how do you, have you got any tips for people to help people experience flow?
I really love the fact that you went back to music, and because good musicians practice their craft over and over, they rehearse a lot, and when we get to the point of muscle memory, meaning we know a piece so well that we don't have to think about what we're doing with it. It almost plays itself, then it gets to the deeper experience, which is very powerful. So on some level, because I used to be an acting coach, when we coach corporate clients, I work a lot with repetition to help you find kinesthetically what you feel like at your best, and so your body can remember that. Does that make sense? It's really repeating over and over and experimenting and playing until you go, wow, I felt really good right now in that moment talking to you. And then I'm going to ask you to do it 3 more times so your body remembers what that feels like. So even when you're having a really shitty, crabby day, your body will go there anyway and recreate that wonderful experience for yourself. So I have great faith in the body. That's just one answer. There are many more, but let's just stop there.
That is so inspiring, Ahim. I want to really commend you for being who you are. And I had so many words go through my mind, but before I make a fool of myself yet, I want to give Angela the floor, because her and I have.
Wow.
Oh, he just dropped off?
Okay, so Angela, go for it.
Well, I think it's interesting because, you know, it's something that you can learn, but, you know, the more that I personally go on this personal development journey, the more I realize that it's not really a place that you arrive where you're just able to just be in the flow. It's something that you have to consistently work on and be cognizant of, and, you know, do things that help get you into the flow. And, you know, when outside influences come in, like environments or the environment or people or circumstances, then it can throw you off if you're not really focused on being in your personal greatness all the time. So do you have any comments about that, and what might make it easier once you know how to be in the flow to kind of stay in it and buffer yourself?
I'm going to give you an indirect answer, because I love the way you put the question. I think that the hardest thing, because I love the word flow, because it is sort of an intangible experience, if you will. And I honor that. I don't think everything needs to be tangible, but because I help people, I want to give people skills and tools about how to work this stuff. So these are like three levels on which I work with people on the intangible stuff. And I'll tell you a little story. This was like a big aha moment in my life. This was like 25 years ago when I was still an acting coach in New York and directing plays. For the first time in my life, I took 6 weeks off and went to the Arizona desert and went to a retreat and did nothing, except a lot of funky rituals. And I'd never taken a 6-week vacation. I was your typical New York showbiz workaholic. And there was a moment that it was very interesting. The woman named Reverend Mona ran this experience, and we were doing some funky stuff in the garage, and she stopped and she looked me in the eye, and she said, "You need to stop being a doormat." I was startled. First of all, my first reaction was I was really pissed. I was a successful director. Critics said I was a good, you know, I think I go for my professional success. But I immediately, once I calmed down, realized that there are all the ways in which I didn't actually know what personal power was, because I thought power was a dirty word. So what I see all the time with all my clients is we all carry old power stories from our childhood. And unless we figure that stuff out, I would say almost everybody I coach, because they don't get the power set, plays smaller than they should, which means every connection they have with somebody is already limited. I mean, I coach very powerful people, like Fortune 500 CEOs, and I can't show up as a little boy, you know, who was told to not make mom and dad look bad in public. You know, nobody wants to see him. But when Reverend Mona told me this, I got it, and later I understood there were power models to use to help us break this stuff down. So
Right.
in my book, I use the idea of power plugs that we can plug into. And part of it is, like when I talk to somebody like you, Angela, understanding where you get your power from, that we can groove on the same power wave in a good way. But
Right.
I can't do it unless I'm conscious of it. So this is just one level of the unspoken connection that either happens or doesn't. The deepest level for me is the energetic level. And I am very opinionated about this one because I think one of the big crimes we commit certainly in the United States and in most Western cultures, we're stuck on this Jungian idea that you're either an introvert or an extrovert. And that is for me a very limiting way of understanding personal energy. And everybody I work with will immediately tell me they're an introvert or extrovert. And you all know the story. Introverts supposedly get energy primarily from their thoughts, from reading, from quiet time. I love Daniel Pink, the writer who said, through this, we need to be ambiverts. And I love the word ambivert. But I'm much more interested in all non-Western cultures have a different term. It's called life force. You know, the Hindus call it prana, the Chinese call it. There's a lot of noise going on here. And the Japanese call it ki. And all of these techniques can be learned. Nothing necessarily. So part of what I do with my clients is say, let's stop the introversion-extroversion conversation. It's not helpful. I really don't care whether you're an introvert or extrovert. I'm with Daniel Pink. You've got to play on both sides of the spectrum. But let's look at the big energy, because once you connect to that one, every relationship changes. You know, and there are many doors to that one. And look at it
does somebody
goes back to sex. You know,
sorry, Ahim, does somebody have a sound going on in the background? Because it's really hard to hear Ahim at my end, and I can hear something in the background.
I hear too somewhere something is going on.
Let me mute my microphone, see if it's any better.
And Johan,
sorry, it was really hard to hear you because there was this background noise going on, and I really wanted to hear everything that you were saying.
Johan, are you still with us? Because I think the problem is with Johan. You think he's moving, but we're not hearing.
Yeah. No, I can't hear him. I'm not going through this.
Oh my gosh, I've been talking a mile a minute and forgot that I was. Yeah, there's a backflash, Angela, that's happening because we don't all have mics on, and when you don't have a mic, it causes an echo in the room.
Oh, okay, yeah. I couldn't hear anybody with my mic on.
Yeah. So if we go around the room and try muting everybody, excuse me, Ahim, if we try muting everybody just to see where the source is coming from, then we'll know which person needs to stay muted during the conversation until they have something to say.
It's not letting me mute anybody on my end.
Can you mute yourself, darling, for a second?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so Angela's muted. How about you, Dave?
I'll mute myself if you like.
You're fine. You don't have an echo, so you're cool.
Okay, so yeah, I think
Angela had the echo because I can hear you clearly.
Or maybe Dave Moore did. But I think.
Have we just shut everybody up, Andy? Is that what we've done? It's just you and me now?
It was just a practice.
I've put headphones on now. Does that make any difference?
Yeah, you sound great.
Oh, you sound great now, Peter.
Let me take this headphone out, see if it's me. Is it any better or worse now?
It's actually Dave Moore.
It's Dave Moore, is it?
Yeah, so when Dave mutes, we do fine. And then
I can take these off then.
Andy, you're so clever.
I'm sorry. I've just been doing this for a year, these hangouts, so I've
I
had
know, but
everything
I
happen.
really love the way you muted everybody for you and had him to be in a conversation.
It's the Edisonian method of improvement.
Okay.
Change
So
one
that's
thing at a
fine.
time.
You're just saying you're fine, so here's your moment.
I muted myself. But that's what happens. You know, and also, you know, that's why it's so important that everybody be wired in to their internet, is because in Hangouts you get this reverberation if you're not wired in to internet, and if you're in a laptop that's not plugged in, and then with the headsets, it's not an easy connection.
I prefer to be stuck on the reverberation.
Me too. Yeah, it has a good vibe. But Ahim, you were just making such an incredible statement. I think the most important point that you made was that your willingness to have the courage to be weak. And as a man, not weak, but you know what I'm saying, vulnerable like that, to just put it out there, even though you had been heralded already as an achiever and having done great things, you were willing to step back and say, okay, I need to learn. And gosh, that takes a lot of courage, and it really takes a lot of courage for a male to do. So I highly applaud you. And what gave you that courage?
Well, when somebody says something to you that, even if you fight in the beginning, at some if you realize, yeah, there's something I need to look at, and then you just need to go on the journey. You know, it's I'm really interested in the unspoken stuff that happens and discovering what that is, and putting some shapes and forms around it, and it has enriched my relationships with people, and I see it all the time when I work with folks in the world, that once we get to that stuff, that's when the magic between people happens. You know, I mean, I value good conversation, but the deeper connections happen on the unspoken level, and how we learn to play with that is pretty interesting. You know.
Now everybody's muted.
Hello.
Yeah, come on back.
Yeah, I love the unspoken, and you know, I think I mean, I'm really amazed by your approach, but Infectious can be, I mean, this is just me reverberating. Can you guys hear me reverberate like that?
You're reverberating a little.
If you turn
Oh,
your volume down, it might help.
Okay, sorry guys. All right, so the point I'm trying to make here is, because I'm such an energetic person, I love to be in relationships, and I value our conversations, while Dave is taking notes, and he's going to ask a question, picking up on that vibe later. But infectious connections, to me, one thing I really was drawn in your book was the concept of a door, and you've used that a couple of times in our conversation, and the point there is, not every door should or needs to be open. But when do we as leaders consciously take a decision to, because I mean, you need to jump, as you said, you need to open doors in order to ensure that the conversation moves and that the relationship moves forward. But when do we draw the line? When do we decide consciously that, oh, this door should not be open? And you know, particularly when you're at the C-level, as you say, in executive positions where your job is to collaborate and open doors all the time.
Well, doors are a wonderful metaphor for me, because even anytime somebody says anything to us, like you were just talking to me right now, Johan, there are a lot of things that I can jump off of. So the words you throw at me are the doors I can walk through to go to the next part of the conversation. So one of my, so first of all, my job is to notice the doors that you're presenting to me. And then I can make choices about which doors I want to open. and that's the way in which I engage consciously in a conversation. I would say 50% of the people don't even notice the doors, right? So we can't even make a conscious decision about what doors we open. And I want to give you some classic examples from my life. I mentioned to you all earlier that I lived in Tobago for a year, and there's a lot of pretty sexy stories there. I don't talk about it a lot. That was over 20 years ago. But one of the things I would say is if somebody says something unusual to you in a conversation, that's a door that you may want to investigate. So in my experience, when I say to somebody, you know, I lived in Tobago for a year, I'd say 80% of the time folks will say, oh, that's really cool. And then we jump on to something else. So that door never gets opened. That door will give you lots of information about me and what makes me tick, because it's an unusual comment. So I would say if somebody offers you something that's surprising, that's a door that's begging to be opened. You know, and I would say open the door. Yeah, I believe in healthy limits and boundaries in conversations, but most of us don't open the doors enough. You know, and or just also take risks in opening the doors and discover what's there.
Angela, please.
Well, it just reminded me a lot of this course that I took during my coach training, and it was talking about you know, being open and curious to other people, and you know, watching for what lights them up when they're talking, and then when you see them light up, then you catch that, and I guess, like you say, that would be a door that you're probably going to want to open because it's something that they're really passionate about, and that they're going to have a lot to say. And I guess as a coach or a leader, if you see your staff or your clients do that, then you know that that's one area that you can zero in on to help with, you know, whether it's motivation or you know, giving them some more mojo to pursue their goals or whatever.
I agree with you. What's interesting about the coach example, when we're a coach, you know, it tends to be an hour-long conversation, and we're wearing our professional hat, and obviously we are looking for the doors. We've been trained to do that. It's harder to do it in real life because we're just a lot more distracted, and there's so much coming our own way. And so that's interesting, but it's what I love about coaching conversations. They're just a wonderful model for practicing all this stuff. And I think coaching conversation is a great model for how wonderfully inquisitive all conversations could be. But notice you're bringing a skill set to it that the other person may not have. You know.
Yeah, and
Eva, you haven't talked for a long time. Oh,
no,
sorry.
No, I'm listening because when Ahim said, you know, he says water and doors, and I'm thinking he adores a door. And
I love it.
The thing that came to my mind and listening to Angela, there is one thing that is, you know, that's coming to my mind, and that's fishing. But in terms that someone is making, how do you react? And can you at least recognize when people are opening doors and in fact trying to fish you or lure you, you know, and manipulating and opening the door, which are not in fact door, probably window, and you can only jump through it, you know. But how that goes along in that concept of yours of openness and you know, full respect in advance, if you get what I'm going.
I understand the question. I'm going to again give you an indirect answer, and another metaphor I like to use around conversation and connection is that that every conversation is like a car ride into the unknown, And if there are two people, one is the driver and one is the passenger. And in a good conversation, the roles of passenger and driver keep shifting. In a bad conversation, one person drives the whole time and one is the passenger all the time. So part of energetically we want to watch out for is, when am I the driver? When am I the passenger? And how can I switch back and forth between these roles? And one way we get to the deeper connections, and which means sometimes I need to shut up and not open a door and let the other person drive the car. And sometimes I need to be the driver. And for me, in a magical conversation, those shifts happen beautifully. That's when I know I'm in a great conversation. A bad conversation, it doesn't happen. So maybe more than the door, that's an analogy and metaphor that I really like for a conversation. And to be open to that shifting of roles, which again is the unspoken dance beneath the surface in a great conversation.
This almost sounded like passionate sex.
And I was thinking also about flirting while that was going on. In one of the books I wrote a while ago, I used a 4-stage sort of metaphor for communications at work that went something like this: foreplay, intercourse, climax, and afterglow. And I'm wondering what Andy's got to say about flirting as a sort of a door opening or closing process, and what that might have to do with business as well as the bedroom.
Walk us through the door, okay?
Where do I begin?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I think one in the workplace.
Help us steer in the right direction.
Well, I mean, in the workplace, we have to be careful. Women have to be careful about their expectations of men, and when they have their feminine energy open, it needs to be in a way that works well with the masculine energy, and not in a, there's time for seduction, and there's time for that kind of communication, but then in the workplace, for you to lead, for you to empower and help doors open, it's a different type of feminine energy. So
I wasn't so much thinking about the direct analogy, because of course men flirt with men at work and women flirt with women. So it's the generality of flirting, not the specific sort of a sexist version of that. But go on.
Wow, you're right about the flirting. I didn't really think about that. Well, you have women with women, men with men, but to me, flirting has a different connotation. Agent David Moore.
I think we need Agent David Moore to transform the conversation and to make sense of our flirting here, Dave.
May I jump in, because you both Andy and you just said some wonderful stuff. I think what you were talking about, Peter, in a way is what I call the arc of a conversation, and relating the arc of a conversation to the arc of a good sex act. And first of all, I believe that a good sex act does not need to end with orgasm. So just like a good conversation doesn't need to have a crescendo, so I want to be very clear.
Mm-hmm.
Great conversation.
Well, when I originally developed that, I missed out that stage, and a woman missed it out, actually, in all honesty. So she said, "My goodness, what do you know about this?" But anyway, go on.
Peter.
And
you're the best, Peter. We love you a lot, anyway.
No, so I want to. It's interesting to look at how we define what a great ending to a conversation is.
Yeah.
For me, the ending of a great conversation is, I can't wait to talk to you again. And if I feel that way at the end, then I know something happened, but it doesn't have to be the fireworks.
At 9:30.
I think the connections can be so subtle, so surprising, in all these other ways. As you were talking, Andy, I was thinking of some research that's very current that I'm really hot on, and that I have found works with my corporate clients really well. I don't know if the Harvard Business Review had a wonderful issue this summer on influencing and influencing skills, and my business is called Influence, so I was very interested in it, and it featured the research of Amy Cuddy, C-U-D-D-Y, who's doing some amazing work at Harvard Business School. And what I love about this research, it's global. Like a lot of research is so Western and so culturally biased that I can't stand it, because I work all over the world, you know, and we keep exporting North American research and say that this is global stuff. So Amy Cuddy really works with researchers from all over the world, but she uses two phrases, and she said, when we decide whether we want to follow a leader, and she says we're looking for two things. We're looking for their competence, and we're looking for their warmth, which could be the female energy, Andy, right? And there's lots of research from all over the world that actually supports that, even though we might think in patriarchal cultures that's not true. And what I love about it, she says, if somebody leads too much with competence and is lacking warmth, we will respect them, but at some point we're going to start resenting the heck out of them.
Right.
If somebody leads with too much warmth and is perceived to not have enough competence, we like them, but at some point we start feeling sorry for them. Again, this is the Amy Cuddy research around this. And I coach, 90% of the people I coach are male leaders at the C-level, and they get this immediately. They immediately know that they rely primarily on competence, that their opportunity is to play with the warmth without giving up their masculinity, and how to figure that out. And a lot of the work I do with them is support them on playing with that in a way that lets them be who they are, but lets them discover the stuff that's already there, because the warmth is there, but use it in a way that fosters connection. So the Amy Cuddy research, which I read this summer, I find so helpful because my male clients get it immediately. It's awesome.
And that's wonderful. And Dave gave us the link in the chat room to go and check out the study. But yeah, the challenge that I imagine is I'm an entrepreneur. I don't work with a huge crowd. But I do influence in different categories around the world. And where I see a lot of people stumbling too, though, is in that sort of male-female dance of keeping it professional, but sometimes not being able to because of personal agendas that get in the way. And I think when you bring it down to being warm and being able to add that in a way that arrives at a connection where you're not having other expectations and sending out different signals, I think that's very, very interesting. Thank you for that.
Well, again, let me add one more comment because it's interesting. I was just talking with a psychologist here in Miami about this yesterday. The archetype that Amy Cuddy uses to describe the ideal leader, she uses the term like a gentle warrior, and the warrior is again a male archetype, right? And so the American example, she says, she uses who was the former female governor of Texas. Remember her? She was a firecracker.
Oh, Ann Richards.
Ann Richards. She said
yes.
Ann Richards was a perfect example of a gentle warrior who had competence and had the warmth. And I thought that was a great example. When I talk about this, like just recently I was in France working with people in Paris, and we talked about this work, and they said, can you give us an example of a leader who embodies warmth and competence? And a woman said, I'm thinking of Nelson Mandela, and that was interesting. When you think of American political leaders, there are very few who have this, which explains part of the political mess we're in, because we don't have leaders who have that balance, or can play on both sides. But the idea of being a gentle warrior is a wonderful term about being a great leader,
Well, we just listened to on Lead with Giants TV, we listened to Mark Crowley talk about that from his book, which was Lead from the Heart, and was hugely successful as a result of creating that type of warmth with competence. I love that phrase, warmth with competence.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, but like the problem seems to be, not just in the Western culture, but in other cultures where there's a difference between the way women and men are looked at, and there just seems to be this huge mountain to get over in terms of people's beliefs and schemas that they've developed, you know, surrounding leadership and relationships. So in terms of your technique, like, how do you get the buy-in on these concepts?
Because I mean, I do work all over the world, so it's interesting. I'm about to go and work with a group in Shanghai for a week, and whether we like it or not, and my niche, my audience are business leaders who play globally, and whether we like it or not, I think there is an emerging standard for global communication, which is Western-based, and I think part of the tenets are that we expect people to connect with others quickly. We expect people to be warm and approachable. We expect people to form teams easily, and we expect people to be somewhat vulnerable. And I think that people who play well globally are able to adapt into that. Now, I'm originally from Germany, and you know, a lot of these are not traditional German values that I just described to you. And so I really watch German leaders who play internationally. Either they make the shift or they don't. And but because I'm a former acting coach, I'll tell you this little story because it really drove this home. I was coaching a German GM who worked for a big American firm, and I was asked to coach him because his American executive team felt that he was too quiet, he didn't contribute enough. And then when he spoke up, he pissed people off because he was too opinionated and he was too much, roughly. And so we joked a little bit, and because I'm also a fellow German, I said, what would it be like if you, when you're on the American team, just act a little more American? And we sort of joked about what that was. I noticed it could sound to you like I'm asking him to be inauthentic, but I'm just saying have some fun with your social role. And we went through all the stereotypes we have about Americans. They're superficial, they laugh a lot, it's all fake, they don't mean it. It's just they're all superficial. Right? This is what Germans think of Americans, roughly. And I said, can you just act that way and see what it's like? And 2 weeks later, we talked, I said, how did it go? He said, I had a blast, you know.
Yeah.
And his insight was, he said, and you know, this works with my German team too. And I love the fact that he said that because what he was doing was playing with his edges and his range. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly.
Act more like an American was just the frame that allowed him to do it. He had fun with it. And that's a good way for all of us to explore who we are. And
and you know, like once they get it, then they're going to want to do it more because, you know, at the end of the day, we all really want to just have these great connections with other people, but then we kind of get stuck. So that's why, you know, the question of the buy-in. So I guess at the end of the day, there's going to be people that are, you know, open to, you know, exploring that, and then there's going to be others that just aren't going to be open to it, and so we just need to work with the people that are, I guess. Initially.
Well, it's when people. I love the way you said it. If you hire me to work with you, at some point you're going to spend 2 or 3 hours alone with me in a room. That's pretty. And what I will ask you to do is experiment. I start with things that are safe, but I will play with your range. And I work with repetition and muscle memory. And so I do. I make you do stuff over. I ask you, comes to my background as a theater director. I use muscle memory language, or I use energy language. I use power language. I test what you can conceptually process.
Right.
But then the work happens in the body. And at some point we get to the moment where I see what to me is a larger you emerge, and I would say, how did that feel? And they might say scary, let's say good, and say, can we do that again? Or can we do more of that? Like one very scary thing I will throw it at folks sometimes, and it's scary, but it's realistic. I said, just give me 20% more of you. And somebody said, well, what do you mean? And I say, well, what do you think 20% more of you is?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to see more passion, I say more passion would be great. You want me to be more animated? Well, if that's what it means to you, try that. And so these are all just different frames to play with to allow you to discover what you don't know yet about yourself.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So it's like improv for leaders.
You can look at it that way. I don't use that with folks, but that works for me, yes. But I think that to go back to what Yuan was saying, because I do in my book, I work on the conversational level. I work a lot on the non-conversational level. So my book is one quarter about how you consciously shape conversations. 3/4 is about how you play with the unspoken stuff, and I try to make it very concrete. I think reality is not concrete, but for like us, I work a lot with intention and action language, and do experiments with you on it. I ask you to play with energy, so it's my job is to help you have a larger experience of yourself, which in turn helps you connect more deeply with people, and people will want to commit to you more. So the payback is very powerful, very quickly.
Yeah, it blows the lid off of the possibilities, eh?
Because you're a coach, Angela, it's funny, and I'm a coach, and before every coaching engagement, we set up coaching goals, and I do a little intake, right, and I ask questions before I start. That's what I do. And I would say in 80% of the coaching intakes, we're not coaching yet, at some point my future client says, I just want to feel more comfortable in my own skin. And if I can help you get there, I don't do therapy. I don't give a shit about your past. I don't want to know that.
Exactly.
I work with you in the moment, but if we can get there, and that's working with the body, working with the unconscious in a way that you can manage, and I have skills and tools for that.
Well, Achim, tell me something, because you were telling about 1/4 of your book is like conscious and spoken, and 3/4 are unspoken thing. Did you make it that way because you think that people lack unconscious, unsaid, practices, or because they react better and they adopt things better on unconscious level?
You ask such awesome questions, and I feel like I'm always giving you an indirect answer. But what caused me to write this book was some research that was done at MIT in Boston, and I love this research because it substantiated all the work that I was doing with my clients. They have a place called the Human Dynamics Lab, and what they did, and this gets to the unspoken in a moment, Eva. They took 5 business leaders who had to give a competitive pitch in front of a committee on a Friday. And one of these business leaders was going to be given a big project that was worth a lot of money. 3 days before this pitch, they took these 5 leaders to a cocktail party, and they measured what they call their honest signals. And honest signals they define as sort of the unspoken signals that the body emits that are just typical to humans. Like how much we sweat, how close we get to people, how animated we are, how much we smile, all that stuff. We tend to sort of trivialize it by calling it body language. It's much deeper than that. They call it honest signals. And they said that us humans make decisions about how we relate to somebody else based on the honest signals. And this is the stuff I really want you to get because it's very powerful. They said, after this cocktail party where they measured these 5 people's honest signals, they said, we know who's going to win this pitch. They hadn't seen their PowerPoint slides. They had no idea what they were going to say. They said, we knew who was going to win this pitch. And they were interviewed in Harvard Business Review. They said, well, how did you know? Like, what was the biggest differentiating factor? And they said, the more successful leaders are more energetic. And by that, I don't mean rah-rah high energy. They're energetically connected to all of themselves. Does that make sense? So I'm not talking about extroversion energy. It's
no, this makes sense absolutely. that's exactly it, because sometimes you see people coming into a room and they're pretty much in the same level, but there is something about one or two or three that made them completely different. They elevate with their communication energy and level of that communication above all of them. And it's not just, a notch, it's a large difference, a big one. You can see it, and you know that those people are the ones that are more potent in their jobs, in their positions, whatever they do. So that makes sense completely. Thank you.
When you describe those people, I just want to again throw a little bit of language at you. Before I did a lot of research about energy, a phrase I used all the time when I really liked somebody, I would say that the light is on in that person. And I like the phrase "the light is on" because to me that was saying they're mentally, emotionally, physically present and energetically there. So that is one thing. But Eva, on the conversational level, the people that can also advance a conversation, there are 3 skills that I think are really essential for leaders. We need to know how to use emotional cue language that people can emotionally connect to. I was always taught that, well, if you talk to a logical person, use logical language, and if you talk to a more emotional person, use more emotional cues. But all advertising is purely emotional because they're not stupid. They know that the deep commitments we make emotionally, but in most of our written language these days, emails and stuff, we've gotten rid of emotional keywords, which means everything is process-oriented and transactional. So I teach people all the time who've forgotten to use emotional, like basic adjectives like, I'm thrilled to see you. I might talk to somebody and say, I would never say that. I would say, well, try, or try to communicate a sense of joy in another way, because otherwise I'm not going to be interested in talking to you. So
of course, because people
learn that kind of language.
Yeah, people like I consider myself, and other people tell me that I'm quite logical and analytical, and that's all fine. But during my work life, or whatever you call it, I learned exactly that. Emotional connection is what counts, and you just have to be logical enough to catch what is that emotion that will sell, or that someone wants to buy, or that someone wants to learn, and I leave the binary code language when I want to connect, because leaders do have that tendency, everything is 1 and 0 and everything is linear, and in fact connecting and communication is in all diverse areas, and binary is just not communication and not connection. So
Eva, let me jump and say Peter needs to leave, and I will need to leave in a few minutes as well, because my son is going to be waiting for me at the karate dojo, but Peter needs to leave, so yeah, exactly. So Peter, over to you, my friend.
I'm going to have to go because I have a few things to do before 6. Although I've done that twice already, as I pointed out.
Drugs and rock and roll, yes.
With 2 children. So
Peter,
I listened mainly tonight because I thought it was very fascinating to listen to your comments on the questions of flow and things like that, really, Akim. So I'm going to have to go and view the rest of this hangout. So rather than be a party spoiler, I'm going to say goodbye to you all because I'm going to go and get a few things done before bed. But thank you so much. I will tune in to the rest of the hangout a bit later on.
See you, pal.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Peter,
much.
good night.
Yeah, take care, Peter. We've been in a conversation for now close to an hour, and Ahim, you've been so generous, and everybody on the call, Andy, Angela, Dave, and Eva. I'm just conscious of the time and the fact that the screen is frozen right now, and I'm not looking really good. So I'm tuning into my emotional cues, and you can make it.
Are you saying it's all about how you look? Is that what this is all about right now?
No, it's not.
yes.
And I look forward to see how cold the Miami water is soon enough. So, but really, Akim, I mean, it's. I think that there's so much material here that we absolutely need to schedule at least another hangout with you. And I'm sure that if we start a wave, many people are going to agree with that. So,
Yeah, just end with a little plug because I know you're planning a hangout with my good buddy Tom Asseker soon.
yes.
Who wrote a wonderful book called The Business of Belief. Tom and I are good buddies, and he very much continued the same themes that we just started on. Now, it's an amazing book, and it goes deeper into what Eva just talked about, which is how do we actually emotionally commit to something or anything. So I'll be there for that one, so we'll continue the conversation there.
Let me do a plug for you, my friend, because you know this book has been one that's been transformed my life, and I'm stuck on the power plugs. You're talking about power plugs. I'm onto the relationship power plug, and in discussion I've been having with Angela, for instance, her and I are trying to tune into our magnetic personalities, and it's really fun to discover that we can just be ourselves and have fun and jump all the time. And I really like your allusion to the 20%. And sometimes you just emphasize what you're good at, and then you just add some more. So I think there's a lot of echo at my end, and I will be leaving in a few minutes. But before I do, I want to give HR Rockstars an opportunity to say goodbye to you, and until next time, starting with Eva, then Dave. Angela is going to be last because she's going to be our birthday girl for tonight, and Andy. So, Eva, over to you. A few words before we leave.
Just a few words. I was really enjoying this hangout, and I do agree with Johan that we should meet at least once more. And it was really great hour with all of you, and I hope that soon we'll have chance to talk more about many other things with Ahim and Andy and Angela, and Dave should be more proactive. I'm waiting for you. I'm waiting for you. And you, Johan, you look great, even when you're frozen on the screen. So Ahim.
I love you too, on that top. So Dave,
wonderful.
You need to react to me. What's that, Ahim?
I just said wonderful to engage with you, Eva. So great to have this connection with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, Eva's is Europe's best secret, but not for too long. Dave,
Yo.
Dave, for God's sake, stop drinking.
I tell you, I haven't said much tonight. I've listened a lot to everything because I will make a confession. I know hardly anything about your work, Achim, but this has given me the impetus to get the book from Amazon and have a read of it and look at your blog. I haven't spoken too much because obviously, I wanted to hear more about what you had to say. And also, I've got the worst sore throat from a cold that you could ever wish to have. So it's been a pleasure speaking to you, or listening to you anyway, listening to you speak. I'm a firm believer of what you said earlier on about the repetition of things. A repetition to me is the mother of all skill. And I don't know whether you're aware of someone called Joshua Heifetz, who was a violinist.
Absolutely.
I think died in the 80s. And he said a marvelous quote about repetition and practice. And that was, if I don't practice for one day, I know it. If I don't practice for 2 days, the critics know it. But if I don't practice for 3 days, the public know it. And so the repetition of your skills is very, very important. And it's been a pleasure listening to you. And you're taking your angle on this whole area of personal development and growth.
Nice to meet you, Dave.
Andy.
Hey, Hakeem, seriously, I can't wait to follow you more thoroughly. I love where you're coming from regarding energy. I was talking recently about how you can take on the attributes of, oh, well, I need to lead from the heart, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. But if you don't transform internally to a place where you sincerely feel that on a vulnerable level and truly care about somebody, about everybody, it's people know. Just like kids know when you're not being sincere, they know when you're not being authentic. It's the same thing wherever you go, whether it's at the grocery store, at the cashier, whether it's Europe, Southeast Asia, anywhere. People can see the light in your eyes. So thank you for bringing that important aspect of being infectious and an HR rock star to today's talk.
I just want to say, you live in the Boston area, don't you, Andy?
Yeah, that would be the Boston Red Sox area that are about to win the World Series any second.
I will ignore that reference and just go back to Boston. And I would say Boston is a city in which I work all the time, so I'll reach out to you. And
please.
If we can grab a cup of coffee and speak in person.
I was just in there last night. I'm 20 minutes outside the city. Very easy for me to get there. I'd love that. Thank you.
Good.
All right, Angela, over to you. My personal phone is ringing, and you told me make sure to turning off, and then anyway, sorry about that.
What are we gonna do with you? Akeem, I just, I mentioned that I read the intro to your book, and I was immediately drawn to it, and like seeing you in person, again, quotes, like I can really feel that presence and that energy, and obviously you've been able to harness that mastery of being in the flow, and I just look forward to hearing more and reading the rest of your book, and continuing my journey and our journey collectively together.
Beautifully
said.
Thank you. Great to meet you. Happy birthday.
Okay, so I guess that I should say a few words. Man, what an evening. Oh, gosh. What an evening of energy. I just want to pick up on a few cues here and then leave you and him to say goodbye to us. Ande, such a goddess. I mean, she has such a great heart. He talks about energy. I think we've all been energized by your presence tonight, Ahim, and Angela. Where do I start? Why should I even start when it never is going to end? It's your birthday tonight, so you've been energizing us with that positive energy, and it's so fun that two coaches get to talk live. I'm so pleased that you and Ahim have been talking at that level. So a connection I was looking forward to. Dave, you're no longer secretly conspiring, and you're always helpful, engaging with us, and you're a true HR rock star, a transformative leader, and I really appreciate tonight that you were more laid back, but when you intervened, the depth of your thought was really coming through. So I really appreciate you, my friend, and I'm following you on Twitter, and thanks for mentioning that on Twitter, that I was, following you, so I could, pay my dues, so to speak.
Thanks for those kind words, and the check is in the post.
Exactly, thank you. We're working on the Aruba trip, so Eva is our Europe's best secret, not for long, because HR rock stars are really, engaging in infectious connections. And one thing I want to say about Eva is, I got to know Eva since August, and Eva is contributing so much to the group in terms of her vision, in terms of her strategic skills. She's such a creative person. There's so much to Eva that you guys don't see, that I see on the day-to-day. Eva, I just want to say to you, thank you so much for the bottom of my heart, for being the person that you are, relentless and unstoppable. You're elevating the community on a day-to-day basis, and we're all grateful for that.
Oh, thank you, and I'm grateful to this community of HR rock stars and all the lovely people I met through this network and community, because you inspire me, all of you. I wouldn't be able to give my best if I were in, some lame company. I'm not. This is full of creative, genius people, and in fact, I am thankful to you. And that's
Oh,
Thank you so much,
I
Eva.
felt
So,
that. I felt that.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
sending you,
that
we're
was-
blowing you
wow.
kisses from all over the world. So Joachim, I'm leaving you with the final words, and then I really need to disconnect because I want to keep being a dad tonight. I really need to be at the Curator. So,
I think you
Joachim, over to
should.
you, my friend.
Bonsoir, merci beaucoup, ok?
Ben voilà. Merci beaucoup, Joachim. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Bye bye. HR Rockstars, we love you. Bye bye.